Revealed. The amazing truth behind the obese girl sent to a farmer for punishment, a hidden forum. Lily's heart sank as she walked down the dusty road, the vibrancy of Maplewood fading behind her with each hesitant step. Her father had made the decision without a second thought, banishing her to work for Mr. Brooks, the gruff but gentle farmer. In her mind, it wasn't an opportunity for growth. It was a punishment, a mark of failure, a further scrape against her already raw self-esteem. She could almost hear the whispers of her classmates ringing in her ears. Loser, fatty, the girl sent away because she couldn't cut it. With every puff of the summer air, Lily felt the weight of their laughter echoing as distinctly as the crunch of gravel beneath her sneakers. The expanse of green fields greeted her on arrival, along with the warm scent of hay and the rhythmic sounds of clucking hens. It was dizzying. There was an escape here, but every hint of freedom was steeped in unfamiliarity. She was alone in the company of earthy goats and a wise old farmer, whose patience felt like a silent lesson, a challenge she never signed up for. As she settled in, those early mornings under the sun unearthing sprouts and the late afternoons coaxing shy goats into accepting her laughter became repetitive yet oddly comforting. But while the vastness of the field spoke of endless possibility, it also served as a reminder of her isolation. No friends to share her secret, no allies to confirm she was worthy of being more than a punchline. Rumors back home painted her away as a failure, tightening the noose of anxiety and self-doubt around her neck. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. One warm evening, just as dusk began to swallow the light, Lily stumbled upon an old leather-bound journal nestled in the corner of the barn. It was filled with Mr. Brooks's musings, fears of inadequacy, battles with self-acceptance, hidden fractures of a man who faced solitude in his own way. As she read, tears drifted quietly down her cheeks. If Mr. Brooks, the very symbol of strength she envied, had frailties, then why was she denying hers? Yet the harsh truths loomed like storm clouds. There was lightning in the distance, the fast-approaching school talent show, a place where she could burst forth with colors and emotions she never felt she had the right to share. Her hands trembled at the thought of unveiling her journey. Could she stand before the judgment of her peers after all their taunts? She had rediscovered the courage to confront the whispers in her own mind. But now she faced a deeper moral dilemma: to share her journey with the world, revealing her family's hidden legacies of expectation that threatened to break everything she believed about herself. As the night of the talent show approached, conflict surged within her. God, could she risk being laughed at one more time? Standing there on stage, the soft glow of the spotlight could illuminate her truths or drown her in ridicule. Would that stage be her liberation or the final chains condemning her? The moment hung heavy with expectation, and Lily stood on a precipice, torn between the comfort of silence and the risk of unveiling her reality. The days following her discovery of Mr. Brooks's journal deepened Lily's introspection. As she awoke each morning to the sun's golden veil, new thoughts swirled through her mind. She found herself reassessing not only the lessons gleaned from his scars, but also the purpose of her time on the farm. The farm was no longer just a prison to endure. It was a canvas for transformation. She began to catalog her days, both in her mind and on paper, inspired by Mr. Brooks's courageous honesty. Every observation she committed to her own notebook became a small victory. Simple things, like the way the sun kissed the dewy grass at dawn, or how a stubborn goat named Daisy had begun to approach her without fear. Each entry reminded her that connection was possible, even when surrounded by solitude. Yet, the approaching talent show loomed like a specter over her newfound resolve. What was she really willing to face? The decision weighed down on her like the humid summer air. Could she truly carve out a space for her voice amidst the cacophony of judgments? She observed the other farmhands, how they interacted without a hint of uncertainty, finding strength in their labor. Perhaps she could draw strength from them too, she thought, even if they weren't aware of her internal battle. One afternoon, as she helped Mr. Brooks with the vegetable harvest, she gathered enough courage to ask him about the deepest fears that filled his journal. His eyes softened, reflecting a warmth she hadn't expected. "We all wear masks, Lily," he remarked, pulling a stubborn root from the ground. "I spent years hiding behind mine, thinking I couldn't be accepted if people saw the real me. But acceptance starts within." His words resonated deeply. Lily started reflecting on her own masks, the different identities she wore to protect her vulnerable self. The persona of the failure, concealing the truth of her anxieties and dreams. It was a fable of falsehood that she yearned to unlearn. Her resolve steeled. She spent that night practicing in front of the cracked mirror of her barn room, confronting herself. At first, her voice quivered, a mere whisper against the barn. Vast loneliness. But with each verse she recited of that old poem she loved, her voice sharpened, echoing with pride and purpose. She questioned what it would feel like to slip off that mask of failure in front of the crowd and replace it with the truth of her journey. Days morphed into a tense countdown to the show. She envisioned each moment on the stage, stepping into the spotlight, feeling the warmth spread over her, and shedding the shackles of judgment. Yet the image of her classmates' sneering faces loomed as a ghostly reminder of past pain, threatening to drown her resolve. One evening, as she practiced, Mr. Brooks approached, sensing her growing unease. "You're not performing for them, Lily," he reminded her as she bit her lip in frustration. "You're sharing your story, and that has value, no matter who listens." But those words didn't shake her doubts entirely. Did she even have a real story to share? She wanted to scream that her conflicts felt juvenile next to all the struggles of those around her. Yet the realization that her vulnerabilities were unique in their own right was slowly settling in. Could they be the very threads that knot her together with others? As the hours danced closer to showtime, Lily's heartbeat transformed from fearful drumming to a steady rhythm of resolve. She locked her gaze on the farm ahead, determined to unveil the tapestry of her truth. But just as she felt herself on the cusp of readiness, a thought flashed through her mind. What if sharing her story unveiled far more than she was prepared for? It was this uncertainty that swirled around her like a tempest, bringing a sudden thought. Could the stage become a mirror, reflecting not just her growth, but allowing others to see their own vulnerabilities as well? The night arrived, and with her heart pounding against her chest, she approached that stage, her breath catching in her throat. The weight of her fears, combined with the flickering glow of possibility, froze her in place. Would she break the hold of her past, or would fear swallow her whole? Lily stepped forward into the shadows of the spotlight, her mind racing with one haunting question. Could she face the true essence of herself? Lily's foot struck the wooden stage, a thunderous echo that jarred her out of the whirlwind of her own thoughts. The crowd shifted, a wave of vibrant energy swelled through the barn, filled with an eclectic mixture of eager anticipation and underlying skepticism. She felt naked under their scrutiny, her once protective layers now stripped away. With every heartbeat, doubt clawed its way through her mind. What if her voice cracked? What if she stumbled over her words? Each what if dripped with the weight of her past failures, creating a swirling vortex that threatened to pull her back into the shadows. Yet beneath that potent mix of fear lay another pulse, one that quickened with a growing awareness. This was her moment, and despite the trepidation, it was time to confront her own narrative.
For weeks she had chronicled her observations, capturing the essence of growth, connection, and vulnerability. It was time to articulate those lessons. "No more masks," she whispered to herself, feeling the warmth of resolve blanket her quivering spirit. She scanned the faces in the audience, searching for a hint of affirmation. Instead, she saw a tapestry of emotions: empathy, indifference, curiosity. But it was the few familiar faces, the ones who had followed her struggle during her time on the farm, that ignited a flicker of courage in her heart. Daisy, the goat, came to mind. How she had once seemed so fearsome and obstinate, yet with patience and kindness had chosen to trust. In that reflection, Lily felt the tendrils of courage wrap around her spine. Her story would also require that same bravery to connect, to allow the world to see what lay beneath the surface. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the light, feeling its heat consume her shivering flesh. "My name is Lily," she started, her voice breaking through the din of her uncertainty. "And I was sent here to change." The words hung in the air, and she felt caught between honesty and fear. Was she prepared to tell the truth? Shrugging off the weight of the past, she dove deeper. She shared the story of her struggles, her failures, and the masks she had worn to hide her insecurities. Each sentence stitched together the intricate fabric of her life: the impact of judgment, the pain of comparison, the journey from self-doubt to self-acceptance. As Lily spoke, she began to notice subtle shifts in the audience. Rapt attention followed her words, eyes widening with understanding. Some listeners seemed to wrestle with their own insecurities, echoing the fearful whispers she had held so close. What was this sensation? As if each confession resonated like a stone being dropped into a pond, sending ripples of recognition and vulnerability soaring through the crowd. She realized this connection was why she was meant to be here, to unravel her story not only for herself, but for those who stood ready to confront their own truths. Yet, even as she became enveloped in this newfound freedom, the ghosts of her doubts still lingered at the edges. Could she really transform pain into empowerment? As she neared the poignant conclusion of her tale, she felt a surge of trepidation. What came next? Would her revelations ignite hope or invite ridicule? But fear was not going to dictate her narrative any longer. With each word, she pushed through, embracing the strength emanating from both her vulnerabilities and triumphs. "I no longer want to hide," she asserted, "and I invite you to join me in shedding what holds us back. My journey taught me that every scar tells a story, and every story has the power to connect us." With a powerful conclusion, she felt the mirages of fear dissolve into the ether, replaced with the unwavering pulse of determination. Yet, just as she began to bask in the warmth of acceptance, a shadow darted through the corner of her vision, a figure with an unmistakable air of judgment. The realization struck like a lightning bolt. There were still critics left to confront. Could she continue to stand tall when faced with resistance? As her heart raced anew with this daunting challenge, she prepared to face not only the crowd, but also the seated doubts that had once imprisoned her. Would this night mark her true emancipation, or would the whispers of negativity steep her triumph into despair? As the echoes of her final words settled into the crowd, the tension coiled tightly around Lily's chest. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the electric charge of vulnerability coursing through her veins. She had laid bare the essence of her being, stripped of pretense and self-deception, but at what cost? The sharp-eyed figure loomed in her peripheral vision, their disapproving gaze like a cold shroud trying to suffocate the warmth she had ignited. Was it enough? The doubts raced back, a flood surging to reclaim its territory. She scanned the crowd, desperately searching for the reassuring nods or supportive smiles that might dispel the lingering shadows. The familiar faces began to offer solace, friends who knew her struggles, who understood the depths from which she had climbed. Their encouragement seeped into her heart, igniting embers that warmed her resolve. Yet that judgmental figure remained, always lurking. It embodied her internal critic, the voice that whispered whenever the spotlight turned on her. Who on earth was she to think she could inspire anyone, let alone change? Steeling herself, she forced her gaze away from that face and focused instead on the hearts surrounding her. The world of judgment felt formidable, but it was not a place to dwell, for she had come to realize that moments of truth did not belong to the critic. They belonged to the brave souls willing to explore their own narratives. It was time to break down the wall built by fear and reclaim her strength. "I am more than my doubts and my mistakes," she declared, feeling a rhythmic pulse in her core. "I am capable of growth, and so are you." Her voice gathered momentum, echoing with the determination that spilled from every corner of her heart. Each word was a stepping stone in her transformation, fueled by her desire to not just share her journey, but to compel others into action. What if, she thought, just what if her openness could ripple through the audience, inviting others to shed their own burdens? She took a measured breath, inviting in what had been an obstacle for so long, and transformed it into fuel. "If I can expose my fears, let's face our truths together. Fear can twist our thoughts, but courage allows them to soar." Those words felt new and empowering, the very essence of what she had sought. For so long, a reminder that growth often blossomed in the cracks of vulnerability. The energy in the barn shifted. She sensed it like a rising tide. The audience tensed with anticipation as they exchanged glances, some even nodding along, eager to embrace the courage of shared experiences. But that figure, the critic, still lingered, thumbs pressed together, almost smug. The discomfort it wrought became unbearable. Did they condemn her strength or embody what she feared most? Unable to resist, Lily took a step closer, squaring her shoulders. "Isn't it time we decide to move past the old narratives and write new ones?" The tension spiked as she awaited a reaction, a ripple that could either empower or deflate. She longed for this pivotal moment to act like a catalyst for change. Could she confront that judgment without folding under its weight? The crowd held its breath, and so did she. Just then a hand shot up, vibrant, confident. And how do we start? The voice belonged to a stranger, but their eagerness reignited something deep within Lily. This was not just about confronting her own fears. It was about inciting action, illuminating the path for others ready to follow. Amidst the revelations and challenges, a spark of clarity ignited within her. The judgment would never fully disappear. After all, it was a fundamental part of her journey. But resilience would be her response. "We start by being brave enough to be real," she proclaimed, a newfound clarity flooding her. "And I am ready to show you how." With that assertive declaration, the crowd surged with a collective energy that reverberated through her very being. The shadows dissipated, unveiling a path leading her toward empowerment, toward the possibility of connection. As the applause enveloped her, she stood tall, lost in the exhilarating uncertainty of what had just begun. But the figure loomed, reminding her that the deeper battles with self-doubt had only just begun. Would she dare to continue down this trail yet unwalked? Could she turn this moment into momentum, risking it all to confront the lingering critic that still sought to pull her back? Would she navigate the choppy waters of self-discovery, or would fear attempt to steer her back into its familiar depths? With a pulse still raging in her heart, she held tightly to the profound realization that growth was a journey, not a destination, and the road ahead was brimming with promise. Lily felt the applause echo around her, but barely registered the physical presence of the crowd. Instead, a tempest brewed within. Each clapping hand felt like an affirmation of her courage, yet every roar of approval was joined by the omnipresent whisper of doubt. How long could she sustain this act of authenticity? The figure still lingered in her peripheral vision, a spectral presence that demanded confrontation. She shifted her focus, consciously stepping away from the shadows of self-doubt. "We start by being brave enough to be real," she had said, and now that principle needed execution. Action was
the only antidote to the fear that threatened to suffocate her resolve. The audience, a tapestry of curious faces, mirrored her struggle. They hung on to her every word, hoping for guidance, searching for the same empowerment she sought. "Let's challenge ourselves," she announced, setting her shoulders back with newfound assertiveness. "Share your fears with me. Let's turn them to courage." For a moment, a silence enveloped the barn, thick and heavy. The room felt electric, as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for someone to take the leap. Someone like her. Lily's heart raced, anticipation mingling with anxiety. In her desperation to find connection, she realized she had inadvertently placed herself on a precipice. She hungered for real dialogue, yet the vulnerability it demanded was unsettling. Would they open up? Would they engage in this collective reckoning? A voice broke through the silence, shaking her from her thoughts. "I'll go first." A woman seated in the front, with hair tightly in a bun and eyes bright with emotion, stood up. "I'm afraid I'll never succeed, and I keep losing hope." This simple confession turned the tide. One after another, people began to shed their facades, revealing insecurities, regrets, dreams deferred. As stories emerged, the barn transformed from a physical space to a sanctuary of shared experience. Each voice was a thread woven into a bustling tapestry of human complexity. In these moments of truth, Lily felt the weight of her own worries lightening. The air no longer crackled with judgment, it buzzed with empathy, a balm to her inner turmoil. Through this unfolding, Lily recognized that the judgments of the figure were mere echoes of her internal struggle. She was confronting not just an audience, but the countless iterations of self-doubt that had churned within. But as she listened, the collective strength of the room bolstered her own. Feeling buoyed, she interjected as voices faded. "Let me tell you what I've learned. The value of being vulnerable is understanding that it opens the door to growth." It was a risky statement to make, but one she realized was crucial. "We must embrace discomfort if we truly want to evolve," she declared, her voice laced with determination. As she spoke, flashes of insight streamed through her. Each story she heard was a reflection of her own struggles. She wanted to help others, but she also needed to acknowledge that her journey was never meant to be solitary. Resilience lay not merely in standing alone, but in standing together, celebrating each shared experience. With that, she posed another question to the crowd, inviting deeper participation. What are 3 things you want to achieve for yourself but have hesitated to pursue because of fear? The atmosphere transformed again, this time with a blend of anticipation and introspection, as people began scribbling down their aspirations. Here lay the gateway to real growth, a shared commitment to take action against the shackles of fear. She couldn't help but feel a burgeoning sense of purpose ripple through her as individuals wrestled with their dreams. But just as hope blossomed, the chilling reminder of the judgmental figure resurfaced. No matter how she rallied this impassioned group, their support couldn't quell that relentless inner critic ready to unleash more doubt. Would she ever completely shake off the chains of self-judgment? Deep within, a storm of questions brewed. Could she genuinely harness this movement of courage and authenticity to reshape not only her path, but also help others redefine theirs? The vibrant thrumming of connection surrounded her, yet shadows still danced at the periphery of her thoughts, lurking with reminders of how far she had yet to go. Still, now was not the time to dwell in fear.
Strengthening her resolve, she knew she had embarked on a brave journey, and the questions, dark as they were, would forge the path she needed to take. With clarity illuminating her next steps, she determined that this fledgling connection with the crowd marked merely the beginning of something larger. But as excitement bloomed within her, another sobering realization crept in. To ignite real change, she would have to confront not only the internal critic, but also the disapproval of others. What new challenges awaited her in this quest for growth and connection? Lily stood at the front, the air thick with anticipation, yet her heart raced with the weight of unasked questions. The exchange had taken a beautiful turn, one she hadn't anticipated. The remnants of fear still clung to her like a shroud, lingering in the corners of her mind. She longed to dig deeper into herself, to unearth the hidden strengths she needed to withstand whatever confrontations lay ahead. As the last murmurs died down and the hopeful scribbles filled the room, she dared to ponder her role in this delicate space. Here, dismantling familiar partitions of self-protection, she began to feel the pulse of potential driving their collective awakening. The call for authenticity resonated deeply within her. Yet her self-doubt, the figure now more vividly embodied in her mind, loomed ominously in the background. Who was she to help others when she herself wavered? Determined to fight this inner battle, she turned the distraction into action. Now, she proclaimed, voice steady, let's focus on what we will do next. The audience, still buzzing from the candor of shared fears, nodded in agreement. The moment felt ripe for discovery, both collective and personal. Share one action step you will take this week toward overcoming your fear, she encouraged. Feeling the urgency of this dialogue transform into something actionable and concrete, faces lit up with determination and hands shot up, and the room ignited with ideas, some grand, some simple, yet all laced with the essence of courage. Each contribution was a beacon, urging her own aspirations to the forefront. Yet, amidst this wave of enthusiasm, a choice rose within her, a question of vulnerability versus guidance. Did she dare lay bare her journey with all its complexities? With a deep breath, she made her decision. I,
too, face monumental fears. My biggest is not being accepted for being imperfect, not being good enough. But I am learning that it is in this perceived imperfection that true connection thrives. The crowd, suddenly drawn closer, sat in rapt attention. The vulnerability she released ignited a round of new revelations, individuals sharing their struggles with authenticity and acceptance. It was stimulating and terrifying, pushing against the confines of her comfort zone. As the conversation deepened, Lily began to perceive the distinct cadence of her thoughts shifting. Each moment spent in raw honesty felt like shedding another layer of self-imposed limitation. In front of her, trembling hands transformed into fists of resolve. For each voice that chimed in shared fears, Lily felt valid. She felt understood. She began to realize that even though she was the one on the stage, she was not above the crowd. She was one of them. After the meeting concluded, people began to disperse, but Lily lingered, her thoughts racing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. New ideas filtered through her consciousness, the need for a tangible space where honesty could flourish becoming increasingly pronounced. She recognized that her own prosperity was eternally intertwined with the attempts of fostering unity among those who shared in the struggle. Yet, as her mind came alive with possibilities, shadows crawled back, whispering doubts about her capacity to lead this journey, to create a foundation that could withstand scrutiny and potential failure. A gnawing thought sparked. Would she be able to cultivate a network of vulnerability that would survive external judgment? At that moment, the figure at the periphery sharpened, a reminder that while her audience had unveiled their fears, she still faced her greatest challenge alone, conquering the narrative that had been written for her by herself. The silence of her surroundings echoed with the warnings of self-doubt, challenging her newfound conviction. In this swirling chaos of potential and fear, Lily resolved to take one deliberate step forward. She would draft a framework for regular gatherings, a step that tested her resolve and commitment to authenticity. Yet a question nagged at her spirit.
What if this endeavor led to more exposure to criticism? Lily lifted her chin, adopting a posture defined by determination. Navigating uncharted waters would not come without risks. The future was ambiguous, but one undeniable truth grounded her. The pursuit of real connection, with all its uncertainties, had become her essence. With her heart anchored in purpose, she felt the winds shifting, urging her to embrace both the support and potential isolation that lay ahead. What transformations awaited in her quest to merge personal growth with community-authentic engagement? The only way to find out was to plunge deeper into the unknown. Lily spent the following days entrenched in thought, grappling with the blueprint of her dream. Each night, her mind spun tales of gatherings rather than fears, but daylight ushered in a cruel reality that weighed heavily on her resolve. The specter of failure lurked up every crease of her aspirations like an unwelcome shadow. She felt momentum, yet each step forward was tethered by the heavy chains of her anxiety. Her first task was to define the structure of these gatherings. She envisioned a circle of honesty, where participants could lay down their burdens without judgment. A simple exchange of vulnerability in a safe environment could cultivate the very connections she craved. Like an artist preparing a canvas, she meticulously drafted an outline for her initial meeting, a blend of open discussion, sharing experiences, and guided exercises to foster connection. But with each item, the self-doubt barked louder. What if they don't connect? What if I can't lead? One Tuesday evening, as the sun dipped low, she found herself in a cafe, nervously tapping a pencil against her notebook. Each rhythmic sound rang like a metronome to her anxiety, urging her to take action, yet immobilizing her in contemplation. She studied the other patrons, who obliviously sipped their drinks and engaged in easy banter. They represented what she aspired to construct, substantial connections built on shared experiences. But the comfort they depicted felt worlds away from the vulnerability she had laid bare just days ago. To escape the clutches of self-judgment, she began to sketch out her personal narrative onto the pages. With each stroke, she reflected on her history, her struggles with self-acceptance, the high tide of societal expectations, and the quiet voice that whispered she wasn't enough. This wasn't just about them anymore, it was about her. As she wrote, gradual determination threaded through her thoughts. Would others not relate to the raw essence of her journey? The beauty of authenticity lay in shared imperfections, after all. After wading through her fears, Lily made a decision. She would post an invitation on social media. The keyboard felt foreign beneath her fingertips, but she typed with determination. Join me for an evening of honesty and connection. Let's confront our fears together. Once she hit send, the release left her breathless, as though she had just leaped from a cliff. The potential for connection was ignited, yet so was the risk of public judgment. Days passed, and Lily found herself oscillating between hopeful anticipation and relentless panic. Would anyone show up, or would she stand alone, a testament to her unworthiness? Each day presented a tug-of-war between self-doubt and determination, each moment another opportunity for internal reflection. The night of the first gathering arrived, and she stood at the designated venue, the familiar sensation of unease creeping back. Doubts echoed in her mind, eerily reminding her of all the faces that might judge her impending failure. But as the clock ticked closer to the start time, a glimmer of excitement pierced through. This was not solely about her. It was an invitation to foster change, to create a sanctuary, and to reclaim her narrative from the constraints of fear. Finally, as a small but diverse group trickled into the room, her heart swelled with something deeper than apprehension. It was hope. Each individual, however hesitant, represented a shared need for connection and vulnerability. Standing before them, she felt the tides shift, not just within her, but in the atmosphere around her. Their shared presence ignited a flame of possibility, whispering that maybe, just maybe, this journey could redefine the bonds of connection. Lily took a deep breath, ready to embrace the unknown. But as their eyes fixed upon her, one question remained unaddressed, a daunting truth that lingered in the space between them. Would she possess the strength to guide them through their fears, including her own? The moment stretched before her like a taut string, ready to snap or resonate. All she could do was step forward and see what unfolded, whether it would be a spectacular symphony or a cacophony of reality. Lily held her breath as the first silence enveloped the room. Each pair of eyes carried an unspoken expectation, a hope laced with trepidation that weighed heavily on her shoulders. She was standing at the precipice of something new, and her voice trembled as she began to speak. "Thank you all for being here." The words escaped, soft yet firm, echoing her inner resolve. The initial silence gradually peeled away, and one participant shared their fear of feeling disconnected and judged. Encouraged, others began to echo similar sentiments, and with each word, the room transformed into a living tapestry of shared vulnerability. As they spoke, Lily felt a warmth unfurling within her, intermingling with her anxiety, a burgeoning awareness that connection often begins in the cracks of our flaws, not their absence. With every exchange, she observed how their stories mirrored her own struggles. Each voice carried fragments of her narrative, tales of insecurities, personal battles, and the pervasive weight of societal expectations. It was both humbling and empowering. She was not alone in this labyrinth of emotion, and neither were they. Guided by this collective rawness, Lily steered the gathering gently, encouraging deeper reflection, asking open-ended questions that stirred their hearts. "Why are we afraid to be ourselves?" she prompted at one point, watching as their expressions morphed into intent contemplation. Her own fears flickered at the edges of confidence, but she quelled them, focusing instead on the unfolding dynamics before her. For the first time, she didn't feel like a mere spectator at the edges of her aspirations. She was an integral player in the symphony of connection. The gathering reached a peak when a young woman recounted a particularly challenging moment, a hard breakup that had left her doubting her worth. The vulnerability in her expression rippled across the room and struck a chord within Lily. It was a moment that transcended her anxieties and wrapped her in a profound realization. These gatherings were not about flawlessly constructed dialogues, but about embracing the reality that life is messy, and forging connections amidst that mess was entirely human. As the evening wore on, laughter erupted at unexpected moments, a sweet contrast to the brutally honest confessions shared. Trust blossomed subtly, binding them together in a fabric of empathic understanding. It was intoxicating, and with each shared story, Lily's doubts began to fall away like autumn leaves. They were not here merely to seek guidance, but to share in each other's journey. She realized she didn't need to have all the answers. She simply needed to listen and nurture the space for authenticity. Yet a nagging tension ricocheted within her. The very weight she had sought to lift began to subtly manifest around questions left unasked. What made her qualified to facilitate this process? Was she truly enough? As laughter echoed and stories mingled, the shadow of doubt loomed disproportionately large, even against the radiant connection unfolding. With the evening drawing to a close, she sensed the exhilarating potential in what they had shared, yet a swirling disquiet still rested in her gut. The exhilaration brought by connection also brought forth a stark reminder. She was diving into uncharted waters, navigating fears not just for herself, but for those she inspired. Lily stepped forward, a newfound determination guiding her voice. "Let's meet again," she announced, feeling her heart dance between excitement and vulnerability. But the hesitation nagged at the back of her mind. Could she repeat this success? Self-doubt clung tighter as she awaited their responses. The applause resonated through the space, but the sound rang as both applause for her efforts and a silent acknowledgement of a deeper reckoning to face within herself. Maybe this wasn't just about creating a haven for others. This was about rewriting her path too, a dual journey of healing.
As they filed out, she stood in the remnants of the evening's energy, inviting reflection. The gathering had sparked something radiant. Now she needed to cultivate it, both inside and out. But the question loomed: how would she navigate her own journey of self-acceptance amidst leading others on theirs? The potential for growth sent a shiver down her spine. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and utterly necessary. The next step awaited her, and she felt the weight of the challenge plant roots beneath her feet as she prepared to confront the truth of her own self-worth. Would she dare to explore the depths of her fear, or would she succumb to the limitations it imposed? In the days following the gathering, Lily found herself enveloped in an unexpected haze of introspection. Each morning she wrote in her journal, documenting not only her thoughts about the meeting, but also delving into the impressions and emotions that thundered through her as she stood before her participants. The vibrant stories they shared lingered in her mind, constantly challenging her to reconcile the overwhelming feelings of inadequacy that swirled within. Her personal journey was more complex than she'd anticipated. As she navigated through the daily grind of her job, every simple interaction, every professional decision began to feel tinged with a newfound clarity. The mundane tasks of the office morphed into amplified reflections on her internal struggles. Was she merely going through the motions? Or had she uncovered a path where purpose intertwined with her daily routine? Lily noticed that during conversations with colleagues, she approached them with a fresh perspective. Instead of dissecting conversations into neat, palatable pieces, she found herself embracing the chaos, allowing awkward pauses and emotional outbursts to settle comfortably. One morning, she overheard two coworkers lamenting about the stress of an upcoming presentation. As she sipped her coffee, rather than offering hollow assurances, Lily spoke from her own vulnerable place. "I get anxious too. Honestly, I'm a mess before I present anything. It's like I have to wrestle these voices inside that tell me I'm not enough." The shift in her approach surprised everyone, including herself. Probing deeper, she began to sense that revealing her flaws didn't diminish her in the eyes of others. It did the opposite. It fostered an environment where her colleagues felt comfortable discussing their own imperfections without fear of judgment. The realization struck her: she was connecting, not just leading. Yet the shadows of doubt still lurked, demanding confrontation. On a particularly quiet afternoon, unsolicited memories of failed presentations and stunted ambitions invaded her thoughts. Each recollection struck like a hammer, forcing her to question whether she was truly capable of inspiring others when her own foundation felt so shaky. She stood, gazing at her reflection in the glass of her office window, and asked herself, "What do I really offer? What makes my journey worth sharing?" That question burrowed itself deep within her psyche, prompting her to seek answers beyond introspection. It was time to take action. Drawing on the emotions from the gathering, Lily decided to revisit her core motivations. She spent her evenings revisiting anxiety and fear, pushing herself to engage in activities that once felt insurmountable. She enrolled in a public speaking workshop, eager to refine her communication skills while confronting her fears head-on. Standing before the small group of aspiring speakers for the first time, she felt those familiar knots in her stomach. The voices of doubt echoed loudly. What if she embarrassed herself? What if her voice faltered? But as her session began and she spoke about her own experiences, an unexpected wave of acceptance washed over her. Vulnerability became a strength rather than a weakness, and what was once daunting began to feel like a part of her evolving narrative. Lily thrived in that space, and each session propelled her further, unraveling layers of her self-doubt. Yet amidst the growth, she realized her focus was beginning to drift. A pesky thought surfaced and lingered as she contemplated returning to her group. What if she brought this newfound confidence back to them? What if she became the catalyst not just for their healing, but for her own transformational journey? But lurking beneath that aspiration was a question that chilled her bones. Was she strong enough to lead with authenticity, especially when her own narrative felt so unfinished? As she gathered her notes after another workshop, determination coursed through her veins, blending with the uncertainty that hung thick in the air.
The path ahead stretched like an endless tapestry yet to be woven. It glimmered with the promise of confidence gained and self-discovery, but at the same time beckoned with countless obstacles just waiting to be confronted. Lily took a deep breath, a mix of excitement and apprehension building as she prepared for the next step on her journey. Completing that path required ruthless honesty, perhaps even an embrace of the very imperfections she had once shied away from. But would she have the courage to invite others into her unvarnished reality, or would she shy away from that truth? With these profound questions imprinted in her mind, she stepped into the cafe where her group gathered, ready to share not just her journey, but also the jagged fragments of her ongoing quest. The time had come to confront not just the light of her potential, but also the darkness of her doubts. Lily stood once again before the familiar faces gathered in the cafe, the space pulsing with energy and hopeful anticipation. The preparation she dedicated to this moment wasn't merely about showing up. It was about embracing vulnerability and speaking her truth, accepting the inherent imperfections that colored her journey. With her heart racing, she adjusted the small notes in her hands, choosing instead to let the words flow from her spirit. "Thank you all for your continued courage to share," she began, feeling the warmth of community enveloping her. "Today, I'm here not just to guide, but to lay bare my own struggles. I want you to know that I too contend with doubt, anxiety, and the urge to hide." As she shared her recent experiences, including her public speaking workshop and every twisted knot of anxiety that had accompanied her, she sensed the collective breath of understanding among the group. Her decision to open up about her ongoing battle with self-worth and fear illuminated the space between them, blossoming palpable connections born from shared tribulations. With every honest syllable, Lily felt the weight of her fears lift slightly. She was no longer shackled by the emblem of failure imposed by her own mind or society. Instead, she was crafting a narrative of acceptance not only for herself, but for those who listened. The very act of peeling back the layers of her journey reinforced her belief that vulnerability was not a weakness. It was a powerful source of connection that could guide others out of their own shadows. "Yes, I still struggle," she continued, her voice growing more assured. "But each moment spent pursuing honesty builds my confidence. Each time I step forward, despite the fear, I rewrite my story of who I am." She marveled at the realization, feeling it pulse on the tips of her fingers. Those haunting whispers of "not good enough" began to fade, superseded by the sound of encouragement echoing from her group. As her participants shared their thoughts in return, she found comfort and solidarity in their reflections. Stories of struggle, of facing judgment, and the quest for authenticity became labyrinth of emotion that knitted them together. This atmosphere, charged with shared experience, solidified not just Lily's transformations, but those of her peers as well. By the end of the session, as conversations flowed more freely and laughter pierced through the serious undertones, an undeniable feeling of triumph surged within Lily. Not only had she conquered her insecurities, but she had cultivated an environment rich in warmth, understanding, and empowerment. As she wrapped up the gathering, the feedback was instantaneous. Participants expressed their gratitude not just for her guidance, but for the genuine honesty she brought to light. "You need to lead us more often," one voice declared, and another chimed in with equal fervor. "You inspired me to confront my own fears." Lily's heart swelled as she accepted their words not just as praise, but as validation of her journey. Proof that authenticity invites healing and connection. Standing among them, she felt solid confidence settle over her. Reflecting moments later on her personal evolution, a contrast to the frightened girl she had once been, Lily realized she had managed to rewrite her narrative. No longer defined by self-doubt, she had stepped into the role of a leader and reconciled the intricacies of her vulnerability with strength. In that space, with the faces of individuals inspired by her journey, she recognized a newfound commitment within herself. She would continue this work, allowing those threads of resilience to weave not only through her life, but collaboratively through theirs as well. Moving forward, her path was clear. She would initiate regular gatherings, nurturing this newfound community as a beacon of honesty and strength. Each event would empower herself and others to own their stories, one heartfelt experience at a time. This was her solid achievement. She had transformed a perceived punishment into the richest endeavor of her life. Lily had not only conquered her fears, but had become a guiding light for others, proving her worth and paving the way for true and lasting change. Now was the moment to take your own step toward growth and connection. For those who dare to embrace vulnerability and seek empowerment, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this profound transformation. Help spread the message of authentic growth and personal achievement. Now was the moment to take your own step toward growth and connection. For those who dare to embrace vulnerability and seek empowerment, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about this powerful conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this profound transformation. Help spread the message of authentic growth and personal achievement.